we're really excited to have Brian and Brandon of Brooklyn Kura with us tonight. And then before we get into the presentation, I just wanted to go over a few announcements. Kayoko and I have opened the shop again. We opened like beginning of November, and we're open Thursday through Sunday for in-person shopping from 12 to 4. So if you are around, please come and say hi. Otherwise, we're doing curbside and online pickup all the time, and you can always connect with us through all of our various online channels, including our e-blasts, and we're also posting on Instagram and posting videos like the one that we're going to have from tonight on our YouTube channel. And then I think a lot of you tonight are Sake Gumi members, but we will be having our Sake Gumi pickup day December 15th. And then we just had the Shochu Gumi drop yesterday. So if any of you members are behind on picking up your bottles, please come by and pick them up. And then, yeah, the name of the game basically for this year is Shop Early. We're definitely seeing delays with like shipping and stuff like that. And then we also have just some things coming in and out. So we'll keep you updated with new stuff we get. And yeah, that's basically it for our Umami Mart announcements. Just, oh, let me, I think I hear somebody, let me, okay, I think we're good. Okay, so just Zoom etiquette. I think everybody is muted now, so that's good. When we do the Q&A, please feel free to jump in at the end. Kayoko is going to be moderating the chat, so feel free to ask questions through the chat, and we can ask Brian and Brandon those questions at the end of the presentation. The presentation is just going to roughly start with a brief introduction from Brian and Brandon, and then they'll talk about the acidity in sake, which was the theme from last month's Sake Gumi. And Kayoko and I were really curious about the Occidental Dry-Hopped and how the acidity was achieved and what types of acids were working in the sake. So they'll go into that a little bit. And then Brian will take us on a brief brewery tour. And at the end, we will all taste together. You can taste while we're talking, no rules, but feel free to imbibe while we're talking. But we will go through, just talk about some of the tasting notes and stuff at the end. And then at the very end, we'll have a Q&A. So I am going to pass things over to Brian.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's a privilege for both of us to be here, to be talking to you about our sake. Hold on one second, actually. We are Brooklyn Kura. I mean, our small company was started in 2016 after spending time falling in love with sake. And I think this opportunity to talk to you about the things we're doing, plus show you the place that we do it, is a real special privilege. We have a lot to cover, and so I'm going to keep the intro brief. But I would ask that this is it's a small group, and this is a casual setting, and I imagine many of you know a great deal about sake. So please do reach out with questions on text, or in the chat, or even offline. Both of us are always available to talk about sake in general and the work that we do. Today, we're going to essentially talk you through, let me share this presentation actually, so you guys have it, and you can see what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking you through some basics about the sake we make. And I think we're going to use this as an opportunity to kind of go a little bit deeper into Koji and its impact on acidity. So Brandon will walk you through some of the core ingredients and then with a focus on Koji. And then we're not Psalms, but because this drink that you have in front of you is distinct both in the way it presents, its aromatics, and kind of the experience of drinking it, we do want to kind of spend a little bit of time talking about how Assam might approach drinking this sake. So just Occidental should be in front of you. If it isn't, hopefully it is in the near future. But it's a special sake in that in our effort to both make very traditional styles of sake, but also to appeal to new people that are trying sake for the first time or coming to us from the wine and beer communities. This particular sake is a great bridge. Our hope is that you enjoy it as much as we do, and this conversation is as informative as it should be. I'm going to hand it over to Brandon right now, and he'll walk you through how we do this.
Hi, I'm Brandon. I'm the master brewer at Brooklyn Kura. Yeah, so I'm assuming there's a bunch of sake educated people on here, so I'll go through this pretty quickly. But we make a Junmai style of sake, which is a pure rice style of sake. So essentially, there's 4 ingredients in sake. We've got our Brooklyn water, which we're very proud of. We've got rice that is domestic rice grown in the United States, largely in California. We use 2 main kinds of rice: Yamana Nishiki, which is a traditional sake mai or sake rice, and then Calrose, which is sort of becoming the American sake mai, but it's also something you'll find in a sushi restaurant as well. It's a table rice. We make our own Koji. So a portion of the rice we inoculate with the mold Aspergillus oryzae, and that gives us our enzymes that will convert the rice to sugar that the 4th ingredient, yeast, will then use to create our alcohol for the sake.
Hold on 1 second. Let's go to the next slide.
I'll do the and then here's a shot of some of the rice fields out in California, where we source our rice from. And then here's an example of sort of the difference between like sort of regular rice that you're used to and sake rice or sake mai. And the biggest difference here to notice is sake rice has sort of been bred to limit the amount of protein. And like food rice, you want to taste your rice and have that protein or that umami in there. And then sake rice varies in the amount of protein that's in there. You can see there's sort of a white core in there, which is just kind of pure starch, which depending on how you mill that rice can lend to sort of the higher grades, the ginjo, the daiginjo, and lighter and more delicate styles of sake. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Yeah, so I just covered that. Yeah, so the types of rice so far that we've used at Brooklyn Kura have been Calrose from California, Yamana Nishiki, and then because sake breweries are becoming a thing in the United States, more sake mais or sake-specific rice are gaining interest and starting to be grown. So recently we released a sake that was brewed with omachi rice, which is another sake mai. So we're always encouraging the growers in the United States to grow more sake-specific rice. Yeah, and so here's just a quick diagram of in general, how the grades of sake are determined, and it's really about polishing rate. So as I was saying, like the outside of the rice, like all white rice started off as brown rice. And that brown comes from like a heavy outside of protein and lipids. And as you mill away the rice, you remove that. And that's important if you want like a ginjo or a daiginjo and you want a light fruity, delicate sake, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's better. There's a lot of kimotos and like lower milling rate rice sakes that I like a lot because they have that umami, because they have all those other ingredients in there, and it gives it kind of a bigger mouth feel, sometimes better with food. So that's just something to keep in mind. Here's a quick shot of some of the rice, and in center, I think what we're going to next is, so why is that rice green? Well, Koji has been grown on that rice. So Koji, the mold Aspergillus oryzae, like this is not us, but similar process. We take a certain portion of the rice that we're going to use for a batch, and we spend a couple days inoculating that rice with this mold in a really hot and humid environment. And again, that's where we get some of our enzymes that contribute to the overall taste of a sake. Yes. So again, 20% of all the rice that we use is Koji. That's I think when Brian does the tour here, we're going to see a little glimpse, because right now we are growing Koji, so you'll be able to see that. The Koji. So we focus on American Brooklyn water and American grown rice, but the Koji ken is Japanese. There's no other place in the world where people are specifically making those spores for sake making. So that is a very specific Japanese ingredient that we use. So I want to kind of switch gears and talk about acidity, and I'm going to use Koji to talk about that acidity. So normally in sake, sort of the base acidity that you have is lactic acid. And that comes from the Koji, it comes from the yeast and other aspects of the sake making. But something that we're kind of interested is using different kinds of Koji to change the acid character of a sake. So normally for sake, we use what is called yellow Koji, which is Aspergillus oryzae. So that's used in sake and amazake. There's the shochu in southern Japan, awamori, that uses black Koji. And then like a lot of the other shochu uses white Koji. So we're really interested now in kind of involving some of these other types of Koji to change the acid character of it. So if we can go to the next slide. So like I said, lactic acid is traditionally the base for sake. For shochu, those Kojis produce a lot of citric acid, which is a different kind of acid. So if you think about the foods or things you might be familiar with that involve lactic acid, there's yogurt. If you like lambic or sour beers, that's usually a lactic acid thing. Lacto-fermented foods like kimchi or sauerkraut, that's a very lactic acid taste. And citric acid is obviously with citrus fruit, like tomatoes, wines. Some wines tend to focus more on citric acid, and maybe you notice that to be more tart. So for Occidental, in a very minor way, we're trying to bring a little more citric acid into it and add to the complexity of the acid base of it. And some of the things that we're interested, reasons we're interested in doing that is that I think it's a good way to bring wine drinkers into it, like to have that different kind of acidity. I think, a lot of somms and food professionals are always thinking about food pairings, and maybe something that's a little more citric acid heavy can bring different kinds of foods into it. And just like a side note, one of the things we're noticing is that citric acid like kind of adds to the shelf life of sake. Like it makes it, sake can be pretty delicate, and it makes it a little bit more wine-like and allows it to get out to the public a little better. Okay, so I just went on about Koji quite a bit. And I know a lot of people are interested in Koji these days. And so I just wanted to throw up a few books that are out there. I'm sure many of you know about the Noma Guide to Fermentation, which has some great chapters and bits on Koji. Recently, Koji Alchemy came out, which is just a beautiful table book, and they do a lot of interesting things with both food and beverage, and I highly recommend that book. And then this guy who I've become friendly with on social media has got this small little book called Koji for Life, and this is a great book for people at home who might want to just, not grow 100 kilograms of Koji at a time. Just have a small amount that you can grow in your kitchen. He's got a really great pictorial guide to making smaller amounts at home. So Koji for Life, I you can get it on Amazon or your less corporate bookstore if you want to look for it. All right, Brian, what do we got? Oh, we're doing yeast. This is yeast. So this is a pretty Koji specific talk, but just another aspect of sake making is the yeast that we use. So I'm going to kind of use this as a segue to talk about Occidental again, because how we make Occidental is we brew just a delicious Junmai sake with a nice clean strain, and so when that's finished, it's pressed, it tastes great. And so we also kind of have a rule where if we're gonna do something non-traditional with the sake, that's fine, but you still need to know it's sake. So we've got a great base for this sake, and then we very gently dry hop it. Were we skipping water?
Yeah, I'll jump to the hops because I think.
Yeah. Okay. So let's back up and look at just a quick, beautiful shot of where our water. This is like literally where Brooklyn's water comes from, and it's a hard shot to get. I've gone up there and tried to get a picture of that, and it's really well protected, and we have great water here. So the hop that we chose to dry hop the sake with is Citra, and if you like beer, I'm sure you're familiar with Citra. And the amount of Citra that we put into it is pretty laughably small. Like beer people would think it was ridiculous. It's like 1/10 of what you'd put into a lightly dry hopped beer. And the reason for that is because, like I've always said, that there is more flavor and nuance in sake than pure wine, but it's just compressed into a really small space. So it's really easy to cover up like some of the nice aspects of sake. So I think the way to, if you're going to change your final sake and affect it, that you just need to be like, have a light touch with it. So I think Citra is great for that because, it's got this sort of citric acid like. It also matches with our yeast, and you get all these like fruit and citric flavors on it, but it's just enough to kind of come up and match the rest of the sake. So tasting stuff. Brian, do you want to talk about?
So I mean, I think we kind of wanted to finish after the presentation on this, so I'm gonna take us off screen share, and before I walk you guys through the brewery, let's take a moment. Hopefully everybody is enjoying their Occidental sake, because that's priority number one. So cheers, guys. And again, it's a privilege for us, Kampai, to be here presenting our sake to you. I'm going to do a very quick tour, and then we'll just talk about tasting. And I think as I'm doing the tour, just think about kind of the eccentricity, but also the focus of the sake that you're drinking. And it'd be good to get everyone's perspective. So I am doing this from our brewery, which is a mess right now, given that it acts as an office and a production space, and also a retail tap room. So we actually, and you guys will have noticed if you visited the bar at Umami Mart, we package our sake in kegs. And in our tap room, we have a bunch of stuff that's exclusively available here in addition to Shiboritate. but it's a fun place to experience sake for the first time, and or if you're accustomed to more traditional ways of experiencing sake. So I'm going to walk back into our production facility. I'm holding a laptop, so if it's tough to see, please don't hesitate to let me know. So our space is about 2,500 square feet, relatively small. As Brandon mentioned, we get our rice from Arkansas, actually, and California. And that rice historically has been really Yamada and Calrose. That rice comes milled, and we use milling rates ranging from 50% and above, depending on the application. But this little bad boy right here is our rice rinser, rice washer. And it essentially handles about 15 kg at a time. And our batches are about 500 kilograms. So it's a little bit of energy and effort goes into that. After rinsing, we're soaking in a very traditional way in these drums to achieve target moisture content. After soaking, we're steaming. This steamer was built in Vinegar Hill. The clean steam generator next to it comes to us from Ohio, and all of which is kind of this cobbled together very thoughtfully process to achieve the quality of sake that we set out to. As Brandon mentioned, so after steaming, we use surface area and clean fabric to bring rice down to temperature such that it's in the right place for the process that we're going to use it for. 20% of our rice goes to make Koji. Brandon said we started some Koji yesterday, and wow, it smells fantastic in here. Can everybody see that? This is Koji about 36 hours into the process, maybe a little under that, and it should be finishing tomorrow, probably in the afternoon. So after we have Koji, again, 20% of our rice, and we have other steam rice, which is kind of the bulk fuel for the fermentation, we pretty much mix it all together in a very kind of specific way in these large vessels that you can see in the distance of the shot. These are 1,500 liter fermenters that yield about 1,000 liters of sake. And our fermentation typically takes anywhere from 20 to 35 days, depending on the style of sake we're producing. I mean, our production has been greatly reduced during this challenging environment, but these bad boys are still beautiful, and they're filled with things ranging from our classic namasakes to stuff like the Occidental. After fermentation, we need a mechanism to separate unfermented things from clear sake. And so in Japan, you'll see things like a yabuta or more traditional styles of presses. This is a beer bladder press where the moromi or the fermentation mash is forced through this filter fabric at high pressure in order to kind of separate out the unfermented items and kind of present clear sake. Other things to note in here that are interesting, and Brandon quickly touched on our water. It is important to us to maintain the integrity of the water in New York City, which is famous for things like pizza bagel and ramen. So we really do very little to the water, with the exception of removing iron and manganese, chlorine, and any particles from the legacy infrastructure. So yeah, I mean, we do, the other thing I like to highlight when we do this, especially for longer presentations, I mean, this exercise is a lot of diagnostics. So daily measurements of each batches that include things like how much sugar is in the fermentation, to what the acidity is, to a range of different other things like alcohol, etc. All of which help dictate kind of the outcome and the quality of what we're doing. So I think from there, let's get back on the presentation and talk about tasting. But I'm hopeful that you guys have a bunch of questions and we can stop talking for a little bit.
Brian, I do, Kristen, who is one of our members, she does have a question. Do you guys culture your own base Koji or purchase it? Is the culturing, quote unquote, a difficult process?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer. Like, we buy so the Koji spores we call Koji Tane or Koji Kin, and we buy that largely from one company in Osaka. Excuse me. And there are people who do culture Koji on their own. I think for soju. Um, but there's a lot of risk for that. Like that's easy to get contamination for that, and there are some kojis that just aren't healthy. So like there's so many variables in making sake, and koji is a huge variable. We've kind of taken the safe road and just like gone with commercial koji kin.
Yeah.
Can you?
But I think one distinction to highlight: we make all of our koji. It's the tane that we import. And in experiments so Brandon is completely right. But then he does experiment with citric koji as well. So which is kind of what you can taste and see in front of you.
What are the unhealthy aspects of koji?
Well, so Koji is a really broad class of mold, which is ultimately the fungus family. So yeast and mold are both in the same fungus family, mushrooms. So there's all kinds of mold, and through the sort of like human microbiology evolution that's happened in Japan, people have come across these different, like it's like this amazing human evolution interaction that's happened over thousands of years, where people have discovered that yellow koji or sake koji will make the sugar that the yeast will eat. I mean, that's like mind blowing. And then in southern Japan, where the weather's warmer and they don't have those cold winters, they happened across these citric acid producing kojis. For
I think
bacterial infection that can happen. So like you that.
Is everybody experiencing Brandon breaking up? Or
yes, yeah,
I'm bad.
his audio's
Sake. Bad.
Brandon, we can't hear you, and now you're frozen. So all right, so we'll try and get him back when he can get back. So the last slide was on taste, and really, I mean, we are strong advocates of drinking your sake in a wine vessel, in a white wine glass, primarily because part of our ambition is to remove a lot of the obstacles or hurdles that people have from enjoying sake, and make it a less kind of foreign, exotic thing and much more of a mainstream experience. And I just, like, at my core, feel uncomfortable with the idea of someone walking into an umami mart and saying, hey, I want a bottle of sake, but I don't have tiny ceramic vessels at home, which in Japan have cultural relevance and significance, but for American consumers don't necessarily. And the same thing is true. Brandon, we lost you. You're back.
Okay, I'm back.
We lost. So so what we don't, so we present our sake in white wine glasses in our brewery, and we strongly encourage people to do that at home to remove that obstacle to enjoying sake. But beyond that, in a sake like Occidental, when you're thinking about the color, consistency, texture, and aroma, you want a vessel that helps kind of package that for you, so you can come up with that kind of full experience without something standing in the way. And so I know we talked about glassware. We in every day in educating about sake, make a meaningful effort to kind of remove those obstacles, and in that, like, simplify the experience with like glassware as well. So I think that's what we wanted to achieve today. Hopefully this was instructional. What does everybody think about the sake or other sakes that we make, like that you might have in California, like our number 14 or Blue Door? And constructive is always welcome as well, even though I know you all love it and it's fantastic, but we're here to learn too. So any other questions or comments?
Well, from the chat, KJ says, it tastes like Alsatian muscat, so good. Hobie says floral when colder and then opens up to a lot more fruit as it warms, definitely unique. And Hobie asks, how did you guys get into sake? What was the process of getting comfortable enough with it to start making it?
So Brandon, you want to do it? You want me to do it?
I mean, it's been a big learning curve. We're lucky to be in New York City, I think, because if like we haven't spent decades studying sake making in Japan, but if a toji or a sake brewery owner is going to come to the United States, they're likely to come to New York or San Francisco. And if they do, they come and visit us. So it's always a great opportunity to give those people a tour and listen to sort of the advice that they have. And we've learned a lot from that. We've had just an incredible positive response from all the sake makers in Japan. And they've been very supportive of us. And so we've learned a lot from them. Yeah. So I'd also see another question, like, does the pink hue come from the hops? And the answer is yes. And it's interesting because when you first dry hop the sake, you pull the chlorophyll out. And so it starts off as green, like a light green. And then like, here's the analogy I make, and I've yet to like write the scientific paper to prove this, but like in the fall, the green leaves start changing color because the tree stops providing nutrients and they start oxidizing. So as the chlorophyll gets older, it goes through this color change. And that's something we've seen with Occidental is the color over time will change. It's varied a little bit from batch to batch, but we've had some that have gone from green to just kind of ruby red. I think maybe the batch that a lot of people here has gone to this beautiful kind of orange pink. But yeah, I think the reason for that is the hops. It's the chlorophyll in the hops going through its aging process.
I think just the only thing I would add is, I mean, it's a long road. I mean, it's non-trivial going from an experience in Japan to home brewing in Portland and Brooklyn to a smaller facility that's kind of more laboratory to kind of an arguably small scale craft commercial brewery. And it's like the learning doesn't stop. And the issues that present themselves across the process, whether it be from sourcing ingredients and equipment to presenting your sake to like a restaurant in a training scenario. And so it's a long cycle and it's chock full of challenging moments, but it's been fun because, to Brandon's point, I mean, we have had so much support and encouragement, and while we take ourselves seriously, I mean, I think we see ourselves as like an agent of the industry in Japan, and all the craftspeople there that really need the market to grow in order to survive over time. And so we're kind of champions of that, which we're proud of.
KJ also says, I visited Brooklyn Kura a few years ago and tried the Occidental. Was it originally made as a namazake and now made as a namachozo for export markets, or was it always a namachozo style?
Well, if you had it in the tap room, it might have been nama.
Yep.
Like that's, I mean, that's the, like, Nama is great. Pasteurized and unpasteurized sakes are great, both for their own different reasons. But if you're next to a sake brewery, the cold chain to transport the Nama is very short. So in our tap room, you're likely to get like exclusively Nama sakes. So you probably had it as a Nama version, and it's also interesting how both the Nama version of Occidental and the Namachozo or pasteurized version have evolved so far, and that's, I think, another great aspect of the story.
And Brandon, you cut out when you were talking about Koji, but Kristen also had a related question. I know that Koji can be a fungus pathogen. No one is wearing a mask. Can you get aspergillus in the lungs? Aspergillus.
So yeah, I'm not sure when I cut out, but yeah. So like, I think the point I was trying to make is like the human evolution of these Koji organisms have happened over thousands of years, and people have puzzled out the species that work, and so like, we're very comfortable working with them. I'll say this though, the once in a while we'll grow a white Koji, which is a very heavy citric acid Koji, and the only difference that you can tell when you're inoculating the rice is that you can taste citric acid in your mouth, like the spores themselves, as they settle on to inoculate and then go on to produce citric acid, taste like citric acid. But everything we work with has got a few thousand years of safety worked into it.
How many folks on this call have had our sakes beyond the Occidental? Oh, wonderful.
Good.
Well, Kristen actually says she loves Namas, and especially taken with the sake that was on tap at Umami Mart, which was the Blue Door Nama. I wish that there were more Namas in bottles that we could buy. Would citric acid help this?
Well, fortunately, we have good partners in California, so our Namas are available there, and we have a really kind of great set of customers that make them available. We work with Vine Connections in California, and so that's helpful. And hopefully the availability of our sake in California will continue to be there, and we can send Nama there because we do cold chain it there. Now, other places it becomes more difficult, and then we can't necessarily be broadly available in California because many people that carry sake don't treat it with the respect and consideration that I know that Umami Mart does. So it's a pretty focused set of places, but yeah, you should be able to find our stuff.
Yeah, and then does the citric acid help? Yeah, definitely. Like, if you think about the acidity level of like, say, sake versus wine has a much higher acidity level, and you don't have to pasteurize wine. It just you can store it for years. But sake is a different beast, and part of the reason is its lower acidity level. But involving citric acid, so far what we've sensed is it does improve its shelf life, and it does give it kind of a broader shipping range.
Yeah.
Richard asks, what food would you recommend serving the Occidental with?
So, I mean, I say this a lot. I mean, Japanese food has huge range, right? And from sashimi to curries, like hamburgers and grilled meats. I mean, this sake in particular, I mean, I typically drink with Italian food, but I'm not a San. I also like it on its own very, very much. But I don't think there's a particular dish that I would recommend it with more than maybe like a nice grilled ribeye or a bowl of carbonara, right? I mean, I think it's just a fun, acidic, high aromatic thing that will pair well with a range of things.
Lonnie asks, what was your vision or inspiration for the sake? Was there a particular wine or beverage that was your muse, or i.e. Chardonnay, Riesling, etc.?
No, I mean, it wasn't like, it wasn't a wine mindset. Like we're definitely in a sake mindset. It just kind of happens again and again that there are parallels to wine. And I think this Occidental like has many parallels to Chardonnay and Riesling. No, I mean we're new and we're doing something new in the United States. So we're just kind of going for it, and then comparisons happen later. So
Yeah, does it taste good? Are we proud of it?
yeah,
People enjoy it, and oh shit, it turned pink. That's like that's essentially the life cycle of that. It's like
it's all learning curve.
KJ says, I missed what kind of koji you guys used for this. Are you using black for heightened acidity?
This is a mix. It's mostly yellow koji or sake koji, and then early stages there's white koji. And growing white koji is like I remember the first time I did it. It's different because like during the tour, Brian showed you the koji that's happening right now, and like on my phone, I'm like monitoring the temperature of it. And when we're done, Brian's going to go stir the koji. But for yellow koji, for regular sake koji, you start off warm, and then over 2 days, you're raising the temperature up to a really warm area where you're getting all your enzyme production. For citric acid producing koji, specifically white koji, that whole thing is kind of turned on its head. You start off warm and you cool down into the citric acid producing zone. And when I first grew white koji, I spent the night at the brewery and I monitored, and like I would go in every few hours and like do maintenance and then taste it. And there was like 3 a.m. on the second night. I went in and suddenly it was just sour. Like it had just reached its citric koji area, and it was like Sour Patch Kids. It's like puckeringly sour. Yeah, so it's like it's amazing that these are very related koji species, but they act in very different ways.
Kristen says, you should be so proud to get compliments from Japanese producers who have such a long heritage. Well deserved to my palate.
Well, thank you.
That's super sweet. Well, thank you guys. Again, we're available anytime. And if you see something you like, we love to hear it. If you see something you have questions about, we love to hear it. So we really appreciate the time and the forum to talk about the stuff that we're doing.
And when the bad times are over, please come out to Brooklyn when you can travel again.
The bad times. And support Umami Mart, and I know all of you guys do, but it's definitely more important than ever to do exactly that. And we're, like I said, I mean, we see this as support for us, but we're here to support them too. All right, guys.
Thanks so much for your presentation and being here. I know it's late over there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. We have one last comment from Yoshi Densake. He says, well done. So well done and excellent. Very delicately made.
I just see Yoshi now. Yeah. Hi, Yoshi. Thank you. Very kind of you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was great.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. We will talk to you guys very, very soon. Thank you guys all very, very much.
Thank you. We'll go make a ribeye now and go to bed.
Do it.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.